was especially emphasized to women. And so that was interesting because in my research, I reread the books for women and for men, and there was a huge difference. Um, for women, there were so many comments about how the greatest gift that you could give your spouse was your virginity. And what was so interesting about that is, the greatest gift you could give your spouse wasn't a life dedicated to Christ, or, just this
Mm,
specific act that you hadn't done. Um, this achievement, right? That, like Mitch was just talking about. And what that also said was that women's worth is completely tied to their sexuality. And so if a woman has failed morally or has been abused, they are damaged goods. They are less than, which we know from scripture is not true.
yeah.
We know that our worth cannot change because it comes from God himself, right?
That's
As
right.
image
Yeah.
bearers. But I think for so many young women, they internalize this belief. And so, especially for victims of sexual abuse, this was a devastating message. And for those who'd sinned sexually, to feel purity culture had said that there was this idea of a renewed virginity, or you could like become a virgin again.
Yeah.
But it didn't really matter because they had already established that your worth was damaged. And
Mm,
so this idea that you could become a second virgin really was not a convincing message. It was all or nothing. You either are or you aren't. Um, and so another problem was that the goal wasn't actually whole self, lifelong sexual purity. It was just don't do this one act, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So people could get around that act by being sexual in other ways. They also were taught to view sexual purity as having this end date of the wedding, right? And so then I talk about this in my book and give some examples, but those of us who went on to get married thinking that we wouldn't struggle with lust once we got married, right? That
Hmm.
sexual purity ends with marriage, is that's also such a damaging message that we don't see in scripture.